We have so many options when it comes to the ways we can spend our money, and they're definitely not all good for us.
I would argue that it's not that the knowledge is inaccessible. It's more of like information paralysis.
That's Nate, and this is Money Questions.
That's Matt. This is Money Questions.
Money Questions will answer questions without a sales pitch.
Confidence, clarity, and some tools to make some important decisions.
This is season 2 of Money Questions.
It's wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Nate. I'm Matt.
No, you're Matt.
That's Nate. This is Money Questions. We want to help people understand one of the most debated topics in Canadian personal finance, and is that, do I use an RRSP or a TFSA? Right? This is a question that comes up on a almost daily basis for us in our conversations with clients.
I want to know how many rabbit holes you went down preparing the script for this podcast episode.
Yeah, there's many rabbit holes to go down. Yeah, there's the TikTok rabbit holes, there's the YouTube rabbit holes, and then there's the rabbit holes that I sort of enjoy getting down, right? And so I'd like to start out by saying that we like both accounts. We like RSPs and we like TFSAs. They're both fantastic accounts. But I think of it a little bit like if one were talking to a contractor about their tools that they use to build a deck, renovate a house, it's rare that they get asked, do you prefer your drill or do you like your hammer, right? Like these are tools and they have a job to do, but it's kind of silly to ask a contractor, do you like hammers or screwdrivers? Like they're both applicable to different situations.
Yeah.
And they're both appropriate for different situations, but one isn't necessarily better than the other. Maybe for specific jobs, one is better than the other.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit.
My brain just went down the rabbit hole of a contractor that only works with a hammer.
Yeah.
But is that just demolition?
Well, that might be someone.
Anyway.
That might be someone in our field that only carries one license to do one thing.
That's true.
And so their solutions are always going back to that one thing, right? But this is a highly debated topic. There's a few people that have done some really good work on the topic, and so I've got to tip my hat to the guys at Rational Reminder, Cameron Passmore, Ben Felix, the Wealthy Barber, David Chilton, has done some great work on this topic. Mark McGrath, who was previously at PwC, has put a lot of kind of work into this topic, and then Jamie Gollenbeck at CIBC. He's their kind of chief planner, if you will. That's not his title, but he puts a lot of academic work into the topic.
Featured in the Globe and Mail a lot. He's frequently cited in these types of conversations.
Right. But I mean, one of the funniest things that happens, and it happened as recently as yesterday, I was sitting down with a client and we were sort of trying to determine the way forward for her in regards to retirement. And she had a few options available to her. But I mentioned RSP, and she had an emotional reaction. She said, "No, I am never ever going to use an RSP. They're just not for me. I've heard bad things." And it was kind of funny because she had an emotional reaction to a registered account type, which is I don't know, a little strange.
Yeah,
it'd be like having an emotional reaction to a hammer.
I would have an emotional reaction to a hammer.
Yeah, and so
but yeah, not the underlying investments within the RRSP, but rather just the tax deferred shelter that is the registered retirement savings plan.
Totally. And if you scroll through TikTok or YouTube, you'll constantly hear things regarding the RRSP kind of being a scam or a trap because of the tax bill waiting for you at the end. And so we want to break down exactly why there's some tunnel vision involved in that view. Yeah. And it may not be a fulsome view of how things actually work.
Because there is a tax bill at the end.
There is a tax bill at the end with the RRSP, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a tax bill at the beginning with the TFSA, but kind of people forget that a little bit.
Yes.
And so we want to kind of take people through, first of all, what is an RRSP and what is a TFSA. We'll spend very little time on that. And then we're going to take you through some math that shows you how, in fact, they're very similar at the end of the day if you just kind of look at them from a mathematical perspective. Yes. And then from there, we can talk a little bit more about how taxes really come into play with both plan types, because that's where the real meat is, and that's where the planning opportunity lies. And that's where one can stand out a great deal versus the other. And then lastly, maybe talk about some of the nuances in regards to how one's estate is affected by both plan types, how it might be different for people in various situations. Like, there's so many variables in any kind of financial plan.
Yeah, we're just looping back around and like this is a tool within a comprehensive financial plan. And there's a lot of variables associated with a financial plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe right off the hop, let's kind of just talk about the basics of both plan types. We can share this note here. You can look at my paper, sir. You've got one too.
Do I?
It's this one here. But just to kind of just right off the top, the registered retirement savings plan, the tax deferred account, designed primarily to secure income for your post-work years, aka retirement. So how it works is you're making a contribution. Most of us are employees. We're not employees, but most people are employees that have withholding tax held at source. And when you make a contribution, you get some money back based on that contribution amount and your marginal tax rate.
Yeah. Well, or another way to think about it is a contribution into an RRSP. The amount you contribute reduces your taxable income for that year. So like $1,000 into an RRSP equates to $1,000 less in taxable income and whatever tax bracket that income hangs out in.
Right. And so if you had a 30% marginal tax rate or tax rate on that $1,000, you would receive a $300 refund on that $1,000 contribution, right? The catch, I guess, is that the tax is not eliminated. It never is, but it's kicked down the road, right? It's deferred, in other words, in tax speak.
Yeah, it's a bill for your future self.
Exactly. And so said another way, you're going to save taxes on the way in, but the government wants that at some point. So while they're doing us a favor in some regards, I mean, they're not forgetting about themselves in the whole process, right? There are limits. So right now, contribution limits are capped at 18% of your earned income from the previous year up to a maximum dollar amount of about $33,000 plus any unused room that you haven't used.
If you don't use it, it carries forward to be used in future years.
Some might call them inflexible accounts in that if you withdraw money for non-retirement purposes or early, just before you intend to take a retirement income from them, you pay immediate withholding tax on them and essentially giving the government the tax back that you saved. And you permanently lose that RSP room. It's gone.
Or another way to think about it is they're long-term savings vehicles for your future retired self, with the exception of buying a house for the first time or going back to school.
Right. Two programs that can be utilized within the RSP for sure. The TFSA, on the other hand, it's tax-free. However, the money that goes into a tax-free savings account has already been taxed. And so one way to kind of bend your mind around this is RSPs, you're saving pre-tax dollars because you get the taxes back. And the TFSA, you're saving after-tax dollars. So that's a distinction between the TFSA and the RSP.
Because with the tax-free savings account, you can't say, hey, employer, can you put $1,000 of my paycheck before taxes into my tax-free savings account?
Absolutely.
Whereas you can do that with an employer-sponsored group,
and
registered retirement savings plan.
That's a really important consideration for those that think RSPs are a scam and that don't take an employer's matching RSP because they have an emotional reaction to the RSP. Yes. They're essentially leaving free money on the table in that case.
In that case, yes.
Right? So with a tax-free savings account, you contribute using after-tax dollars. You get no tax deduction like you do with the RSP. But once you put money in, it's never taxed again. So there's no immediate impact on your tax return. But when you pull it out, unlike the RSP, it doesn't get added to your tax bill. It's tax-free. The benefit is that you've already paid some income tax on the money going in. The account is an absolute fortress against taxes. So 100% of all your withdrawals are completely tax-free. They have lower limits.
Yes. Yep.
Were you going to say something else? Sorry, I kind of steamrolled.
No, you didn't really steamroll. I was looking for a way to sort of insert myself to flip you into a simple example.
Understood.
Yes.
Okay.
But I just couldn't find a way in.
We got there. So with tax-free savings accounts, right now or last year, the limit was $7,000. There's some really smart people out there that kind of front run the government and determine based on inflation numbers and other inputs what the contribution limit will be next year. And some of those people have determined that next year it will be $7,500 based on that.
That's interesting, yeah. So if you were the age of majority when tax-free savings accounts were created in 2009,
yep,
you would be able to save a combined $109,000 in those accounts of deposits.
Right, right. And so they can be viewed as an important savings vehicle for retirement. They're used for a bunch of things, but I mean, if you think about someone with a $100,000 TFSA today who's got 30 years of runway, it's not completely crazy to say their money, their $100,000 could double 3, 4, 5 times over the course of 30 years. So 100 to 200 to 400 to 800 to 1.6 to 3.2 million dollars. That can be a pretty powerful retirement savings vehicle
to be able to pull money out
tax-free in the future. Massive. And that's where the attraction lies, really. That sounds really great.
Absolutely.
And it is. There's no doubt about that.
Depending on their investor profile and their risk tolerance and what you're invested in.
One important distinction here in talking about the RRSP and the TFSA is they are not an asset class in and of themselves. So we often hear people say things like, I bought an RRSP or I bought a TFSA, right? Think about it like the RRSP and the TFSA is a suitcase and a backpack. It's not you didn't necessarily buy it because it's a suitcase or a backpack. You bought it so you could put things in it and take them somewhere.
Yes.
Right? And so
because you're putting money in said things.
You're putting money in said things, right? So you can put investments into these accounts, and Canada's kind of done a miserable job of naming these things because you really shouldn't just save in either of these accounts. Saving by nature is just putting money away, not necessarily earning anything. When you invest it, on the other hand, you earn a rate of return. All right. And so one of the benefits of these account types is the growth inside them is either tax-free or tax-deferred, right? So it's not necessarily the bag you hold, but what you put in it, if you will.
And now I'm getting distracted with duffel bags full of cash.
Yes, exactly. We all like duffel bags full of cash. So, I mean, because of those distinctions, they're kind of held out as good for different things, but we think they're both important for retirement planning. And one good analogy that I heard about them is with a TFSA, you consider a business partnership. With a TFSA, you might have a business partner that says, I'm not going to give you a single dime to start up. You have to raise a full $10,000 on your own. But no matter how well the business does and how massive your company gets, I'll never take a penny of your profits, right? I'm going to be your partner and I'm not going to take a penny of your profits. That $10,000 and everything you earn from it is all yours. Now versus the RRSP, you take that same $10,000, you have a business partner there that's going to give you an extra $3,000 or $4,000. That business partner in this case is the government of Canada.
Yeah,
right?
From a tax refund from the contribution to that account.
Exactly. So your pool of money to start out with the RRSP can be slightly larger, right? Because of that tax refunding mechanism. But we have to remember that this business partner with the RRSP, they want their investment back, right? So if you saved 30% on the way in, they're going to want a return when you pull the money out. In this case, the government wants their taxes. There's the same percentage or the percentage that you're at of taxes when you pull the money out.
Back.
Yeah. Anyhow, but I think because of that mechanism, because you've already paid the taxes going into a TFSA, you sort of forget about the front end when you're pulling money out. And so that's what we see with RRSPs sometimes. Is as people pull money out, it's been 30 or 40 or maybe 50 years since they've put the money in. They forgot about the tax savings on the way in, and they sort of curse the taxes they have to pay on the way out. Yeah.
So, do we want to pivot now to your example of the imaginary $10,000?
Yes. So that's all well and fine. Talking about tax-free savings accounts versus RSPs. The ultimate question is which one is better, right? So
Depends.
It depends. But if we were to look at this simplistically and say, okay, if you have the same tax rate when you contribute to an RSP as you do when you withdraw from an RSP or take it out from a RIF when in retirement, then the outcome with a TFSA versus an RRSP is exactly the same, right? So
where in reality, the majority of Canadians, their tax rate in retirement is typically less than when they're in the workforce.
Totally. So just to give you a simple example, so imagine you have $10,000 in pre-tax income, and you're in a 40% tax bracket. You take that $10,000, and if you put it into a TFSA and you're taxed at 40%, you're only going to be able to put $6,000 of that $10,000 into the TFSA.
Yeah.
And let's say it triples. Now you've got $18,000 tax-free that you can pull out. Okay. Shift to the RSP. If you invest $10,000, the full $10,000 makes it in there. You're essentially, because you got the taxes back. So $10,000 goes in, and let's say that triples. It's now worth $30,000. But if you pull that $30,000 out, and you're still in that 40% tax bracket, 40% of $30,000 is $12,000. You're left with $18,000. So at the end of the day, the tax-free savings account and the RSP are virtually identical if your tax rate going in is the same as your tax rate coming out. And that's where the opportunity for planning arises, right? Because if you can work with someone or you can do it yourself to manage your tax rate to some extent in how you pull money out, you can find advantages with the RSP that you might not be able to get with the TFSA. In fact, you might lose some of the tax advantages with the TFSA that you might get with the RSP. So getting into that a little bit further, the refund trap, if you will, right? If you will. It's not a trap. There's no traps here.
But I guess that's a good pivot into like what people typically have their tax refunds allocated for.
Totally.
Like we did a lot of tax returns this year.
We did.
Yeah.
We just had a taxed postpartum meeting this morning.
It's true.
And
we talked about filing over 500 tax returns.
Right. So we saw a lot of tax returns. We saw a lot of people's tax situations.
And of the refunds that we saw, there was a lot of conversations with clients about it was filling up the oil tank. It was paying for a portion of their property tax bill. It was filling back up their emergency savings in their checkings account.
Right.
There's some vacations in there too, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and we both know a lot of people that treat their tax refunds as kind of free money.
Yeah.
Right.
Or some sort of forced savings vehicle.
Right. Yeah. And they might use that to pay off a credit card. They might use that to go on a holiday, to your point.
Yeah.
Right. But the fact there is that when you spend that tax refund, you sort of diminish one of the advantages that you get with an RSP.
Yeah.
Right. And that's totally fine. But, we're just calling it what it is.
Yeah.
If you were to treat things as completely optimal and spreadsheet based and went solely by the math, the best way to treat a tax refund from an RSP contribution is to turn around and reinvest it. Because then you sort of double down on the tax savings compounding that you get from the RSP, right? So in that regard, the RSP lacks the flexibility that a TFSA does because when you pull the money out, you do get taxed on it, but you saved that tax, so you're sort of getting your money back, or you're giving that money back in a sense. Whereas with the TFSA, you've already paid the tax, and so the perceived win of the TFSA is because the TFSAs are flexible in that when you pull that money out, it doesn't get added to your income. And unlike the RSP, when you pull the money out of a tax-free savings account, you regenerate the room the following year. That doesn't happen with the RSP. You lose the room in the following year.
Yeah.
So that's just a consideration for people to have, right? Yeah. And as an aside, with the tax-free savings account, it is possible to create massive amounts of room depending on how your investments do.
It's true.
Right? So if someone has a $100,000 TFSA and they hit a big one and it becomes a $500,000 TFSA, if you take all that money out of your TFSA, the following year, you can put $500,000 back into the TFSA plus that year's contribution limit.
Yeah. and other examples I have seen throughout my career are people evaporating their tax-free savings account room.
Yeah, it works in reverse too.
Yeah, so like if you hold speculative investments within that tax-free umbrella and that $100 you invested goes to zero, you've essentially reduced your tax-free savings account room
Forever.
It's
Gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I saw one yesterday, and this individual took a 50% loss in their tax-free savings account and evaporated $25,000 of room.
Right. That's sad.
Oops.
Oops. Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad, right? So, I mean, while the TFSA is flexible, it does raise the important point that that flexibility can create some behavioral issues, right? If you're saving for retirement within the TFSA, the lack of friction in taking the TFSA withdrawals out because you don't add to your tax bill makes it kind of easy to raid for things that you want in the moment, right? And again, that's fine.
That's fine.
As long as we know what we're doing and what, it's fine. As long as we know what we're doing, right? And that happens, right? You might get a big tax. You might pull money out of your TFSA because you had a big year. You made a good high rate of return and you're like,
I'm going to take some of this growth and I'm going to take the family to Disneyland.
Exactly. You're less likely to do that with the RRSP if you're going to be adding to your tax bill.
But I guess like that tax-free savings account can also be used as a tool to facilitate short-term and medium-term savings goals.
Right.
Not just for your future retired self.
This is true. But if you're, at the same time, if you're one of these people that's trying to optimize every little thing and you have the means to do that, you probably shouldn't even be saving for those types of things in your TFSA, right? Just because you're foregoing the potential kind of benefit of a big rate of return inside a tax-free environment, right?
So what's the goal? What's the plan? What are we trying to achieve?
Absolutely. So there's a bit of a rule of thumb that you hear often about the RRSPs versus TFSAs when this question gets asked, and that rule of thumb is essentially that at about $60,000 or $70,000 worth of income, the TFSA is far more beneficial than the RRSP, right? And while on the surface that may hold true because the thinking there is that below $70,000, your tax rate isn't necessarily high enough to fully benefit, and additionally, when you pull the money out, you may not be in a much lower tax bracket. And so the thinking goes that you may not benefit as much for long-term retirement savings within an RRSP versus a TFSA. But again, like everything, there's nuance there that we're going to get into, right? And so there's a little bit more to that because one of the pushbacks on that thinking is that most people in retirement are in a lower tax bracket than they were when they were in their earning years, especially in their peak earning years, so to say, right?
Yeah,
and so that is one of the advantages of the RRSP because you could be in a high tax bracket in your peak earning years, for example, but when you go to retire, you could be 2 or 3 tax brackets lower. So you're giving back less tax than you saved on the way in. So there's an arbitrage opportunity there for those that want to put some planning into it.
Yeah, and it starts with understanding your cash flow while you're employed versus the cash flow which you want or need in retirement. Like one of the goals we work with clients is like making sure the mortgage is paid off before they retired. If you don't have a mortgage payment, which is one of the largest monthly payments of most households, you don't need to pay yourself as much money in retirement, and therefore you have the ability to lower your taxable income.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a whole other episode in and of itself.
That's true.
Right? Do I pay off my mortgage or do I invest? Right? Because that's a question that comes up fairly often as well.
Yeah.
We don't have time for that right now.
We do not.
Anyways, but I guess there's hidden superpowers within the RRSP that the TFSA does not enjoy. For example, for parents, right? For in Canada, for parents, there's the Canada Child Benefit, right? And it's a tax-free payment from the government based on your income and how many children you have.
Yeah.
Right?
Based on your household taxable income.
Right.
I
Yeah, your net income, right? Yeah. And so let's say you're on the brink of receiving the Canada Child Benefit. maybe your household's earning a little too much to receive it even, right? By making an RSP contribution, you're lowering your taxable income and opening yourself up to receive
Government benefits.
this government benefits that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
So that changes the math
Yes.
because it's essentially, you could kind of look at it as additional tax savings. You wouldn't get that by putting money in a TFSA.
Yeah, because it does not affect your tax return.
Does not affect your tax return any bit.
Yeah.
And so, families with multiple kids, heavily, the RSP kind of gets heavily tilted towards being beneficial for them, especially during their peak child rearing years, if they're earning a decent income, right? The retirement arbitrage is another one, right? So on the way out, like in Canada, everybody's got the personal amount. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's just if you're like a living, breathing Canadian, you are exempt from taxes on a certain amount of money.
Yeah, about $15,000 to $17,000
federally, and then there's another amount that changes by province.
Right. So, said another way, you can earn between $15,000 and $20,000 tax free in Canada.
Yeah.
First $15,000 to $20,000, you don't pay any taxes.
Yeah, and then the next amount is in another tax bracket, and an amount over that is in another one because we have a graduated tax system. So when we're talking about average tax rates, it's the average of all those brackets together, and the marginal tax rate is the highest tax bracket you're hanging out in. And when it comes to making like an RRSP contribution, that RRSP contribution, whether it be $1,000 or more, it's directly beneficial in that highest tax bracket.
Right. So if you're earning $150,000 a year, that highest tax bracket can be, close to 40%.
Yes.
Right. In retirement, you may not be earning that amount. Right.
You may not need to earn that.
You may not need to either. Right.
Yeah.
And so this can create interesting conversations around the start of CPP, Canada Pension Plan, which is something that all Canadians that have worked and lived in Canada are eligible for. At age 60, you receive a letter on your 59th birthday, I believe, telling you that you'll be eligible for your CPP. If you defer your CPP from age 60 onwards, it increases every month that you defer it. So you kind of get a guaranteed rate of return on the CPP income that you can receive by deferring it down the road.
Yeah. Doesn't it equal to like 7% a year, 6 or 7% a year?
Yeah, but just over 8% actually. It's pretty high,
Yeah.
right? And so by the end of 10 years, because you can defer all the way until your 70th birthday, it more than doubles the amount that you can receive from CPP. So if we think about that in the context of an RSP and the personal amount that every Canadian has available to them, you could foreseeably take money out of your RSP between the ages of 60 and 70 to the tune of your personal amount and not pay any taxes on that $15,000 every year for 10 years. So you could effectively get money out of your RSP tax-free.
Yes.
But you lose that benefit if you only have TFSA income, because that TFSA income doesn't even hit your tax return, and therefore any other income is going to hit your tax return. So, there's these little nuances that kind of change the conversation from a simplistic one to something that's a little bit more complicated, but something that could also potentially save you tens of thousands of dollars, even hundreds of thousands of dollars later on in life by doing things in a thoughtful way.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to have the conversations and understand like what is the plan and the options available to you.
Absolutely. Well, and in listening to the Rational Reminder guys and David Chilton and Mark McGrath in their podcasts, Mark McGrath did a lot of work in running different models using financial planning software, and it sort of flew in the face of a lot of that conventional wisdom that you should hold off on making RSP contributions until your income is over a certain amount. And the reason for that is because of the government benefits that it opens up to you, all the other things that are kind of tax informed about the plan type that you may not consider when just looking at the RSP versus the TFSA on the surface. So it's not such a simple question in the end.
Yeah. So we're hoping this podcast doesn't turn into like a word salad soup. But at
Salad soup. That would be bad.
that would be bad.
I guess that's full.
This-
Yeah. Anyways. Oh man. Another thing that will affect whether one is better than the other is how long you live, right? So if you have a long life, then there is the potential that the RSP wins due to decades of tax sheltered compounding and the ability to, creatively take money and apply it to, various tax credits that are available to people.
Yeah.
I mean, another kind of tax perk available to married couples is, income splitting, right? And so you can split pension income with your spouse, thereby lowering the household's overall tax bill. Because if one person's earning $200,000 and one person's earning $30,000, you can take the person who's earning $200,000 and
up to half of their pension income, depending on their age, and you roll it to the other spouse's tax return.
And it thereby kind of lowers the household's overall tax rate.
Yeah.
Right. And that wouldn't be available to someone with a TFSA.
But that's probably that's one of the main reasons that in retirement, most Canadians are in a lower tax bracket than they were when they're working.
Because they have the income splitting opportunity. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the reason that kind of throws a wrench into planning is because it's the one thing that throws the wrench into all planning, and that is that we could draw up a perfect retirement income plan for you if we knew exactly when you were going to die.
Yes.
But we rarely have that, that information going in, and so we're going in with assumptions a lot of the time, and we like to assume that people are going to have a long life. But it could be that if you die young with a large RSP, it's not good from a tax perspective.
No, because the balance of that account is taxed as income on the day before you pass away. So yeah.
Right. So if you have if you put away $1 million, or you put away less than that, and it grew to $1 million within an RSP, and you died, it's all deemed to have been income in the year that you die, right? So instead of $50,000 a year, it's $500,000 in 1 year. So the tax bill on that $500,000 is going to be much larger than $50,000.
And the only thing that kicks that tax bill down the road is if you have a surviving spouse.
Right.
Because if I go first, then my wife gets my savings tax deferred, and then as she draws it out, she pays the appropriate taxes on it. But if there's still money left and she passes away, that's when the tax bill is generated.
Yeah, for sure. And on the flip side, to compare that to the TFSA, it's a very estate-friendly account.
Yeah, we have conversations and we use it as an estate planning tool because it bypasses provincial probate. You can put some beneficiaries on it. And leaves money to people you care about.
Yeah. And one important distinction there is, with the RSP, you can name a beneficiary. That beneficiary receives the proceeds of your RSP. Unless they're a spouse, they receive the RSP tax deferred. If it doesn't go to them, then it gets taxed on the way out to the beneficiary. But with a TFSA, anybody that has a TFSA and a spouse should ensure that their spouse is named as a successor holder instead of a beneficiary. You have those two options within a TFSA, and this gets overlooked a lot.
And what does that mean?
What that means is, if you and your spouse both have a maxed out TFSA and one of you passes, the other, as successor holder, can inherit the entire TFSA regardless of their room. So the room for, a TFSA holder in 2026 that was age of majority in 2009 is $109,000.
Yeah.
So you can't typically contribute more than that. But if your spouse dies, you can inherit their $100,000 TFSA, even if you don't have the room.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful because you can't do that with most estate assets, right? While the RSP does flow over to the spouse tax deferred, eventually the taxes will be paid. So that can be kind of a tick mark for the TFSA as far as an estate planning tool. Because some people's goal is to leave a big estate.
Yes.
I'm
never going to spend my money.
Right.
Regardless of how much you convince me to travel, Nathan, I'm not going to travel. and I'm going to save my money
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the funny
for
thing
my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
That's fine. Yeah. Disciplined savers often have a hard time spending their money. That the same qualities that allowed them to save for their entire lives for retirement prevent them from enjoying the money that they put away a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, you're right. That's another one altogether, right? So, longevity, how estates come into play, kind of really affect whether or not you want to look at an RSP versus a TFSA, right? How long you live really decides the ultimate winner in a lot of ways. And that's something that's impossible for us to predict. I think the ultimate takeaway here for anybody trying to decide whether or not to use an RSP or a TFSA is what we always come back to, right? What are your goals? What's your time horizon, right? Risk tolerance kind of may not be a factor in this one so much in regards to saving for retirement in both accounts. You probably are going to use a similar vehicle for retirement savings in both accounts. If you have a short-term goal in the TFSA, you're probably not going to use a retirement type investment for that short-term goal.
That's what I was about to interject in.
Yeah.
Like if you're using that tax-free savings account for shorter-term objectives, you should not expect the same growth as like long-term investment objectives.
I like to call it the spend by date.
Yes.
So if your spend by date is a year down the road, you probably shouldn't be in a portfolio that has the potential to drop 35%. But you may want to be in that type of portfolio if the long-term expected returns are really high because you have a 30-year time horizon versus a 1-year time horizon. You're likely to be able to recoup any losses over that time frame and grow a bigger pool of assets. Anyhow, when in doubt, do both. So how might you go about doing that? Well, one of the strategies that we like to employ is that anybody making RSP contributions take the refund that they receive from those RSP contributions and contribute it to a TFSA.
Yeah.
Right. Because really, at the end of your working life, one of the things that we often try to solve for is flexibility.
Yes.
Right. And having various account types can afford you the flexibility to pull money out of a tax-free savings account for a leaky roof, where you might not want to do that from an RSP because it's going to jack up your taxable income for a year.
Yep. Down payment for a car or major car repair.
Absolutely.
There's another school of thought where like using the tax refund to pay down the liability side of that net worth equation and throw a lump sum payment onto the mortgage so you don't have that big debt obligation and you can also retire sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, as we said a number of times, we can't predict when people are going to die, but what we can predict is that there's going to be various routes they can take if they have flexibility in their financial plan, right?
I think I have the name of the episode. RRSPs and tax-free savings accounts, they're tools, not solutions.
They're tools, not solutions.
Oh, I think we're on to something.
There you go. Yeah.
They're tools, not solutions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and people in the investment business always talk about diversification. And so this is a way to further diversify your retirement savings. To protect it from changes in tax rates, right? That's another argument against the RSP is who's to say the government's not going to jack up tax rates one day and my tax rate's going to be higher when I pull the money out of the RSP versus when I put it in, right? So people become concerned about that. But this diversifies that away to some extent.
Yeah, do both.
Do both, right? If you have the means, do both.
Yes.
It's rare that anyone can max out both. I shouldn't say rare, but it's not as common, and so it doesn't mean you have to max out both. You can still utilize the tax savings from an RSP and place them in a TFSA. However, it's really interesting when you take the RSP refund or the tax refund from the RSP and then apply that back to the RSP.
Yes.
Because there's a neat compounding effect on the tax savings because it's money you never even put in there. So you're getting tax savings on money that you didn't even have to earn in the first place. Well, you did, but
you did. Yeah, it's the taxes that you don't have to pay until a future date.
Absolutely,
is you're getting that
deferral, not tax free, right? Which can be a difficult concept, and so I think that's why the conversation becomes a lot more nuanced than TFSAs are better because you never have to pay taxes again. And you're like, yeah, well, you lose the flexibility of utilizing things like the personal exemption.
So ideally with this podcast, we either demystified or additionally confused the average listener.
Yes.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Listen and subscribe to Money Questions, wherever you get your podcasts.